Everybody, I'm Richard Ramos, and welcome to season two of the Parent Whisperer podcast, where we are turning the hearts of parents towards their children and the hearts of children towards their parents. And I believe that that is the best method for preventing children from joining negative lifestyles, going down the wrong road, and all the things that we, as parents, never want our children to be doing. So I'm excited for season two. And this season in 2026, I just plan to basically do the same thing I've always done, which is to provide insight, information, education, guidance, encouragement. And also this year, I'm going to be now having a YouTube channel. So now you can both watch and or listen to the podcast. And I'm also going to be able to invite guests on. Um, periodically. So I'm probably going to just do one episode a week right now just to get started. This is all new for me. Not recording the podcast because I did that last year. There's 53 episodes. If you missed any of those, you can go to my website, richardrramos.com, and all the episodes are there. I covered a lot of ground last year, and as I said, I'm just going to continue to do the same thing, probably some new information and some different subjects that I don't always cover in Parents on a Mission. But I just believe that when our hearts are turned, the turning the hearts theme, when there's that connection, that attachment, that makes all the difference in the relationship of mom and dad with their children. And I find that oftentimes that is the missing piece. And as I have here in my notes here, I strongly believe that this parent-child relationship is the solution to problems that we have at the community level, at the state level, at the national level, and globally. That is what I believe. Now, I'm not saying that it's the only solution, but I believe it is a major solution because when you really think about raising children to become the citizens in the next generation of adults, who are we producing? And unfortunately, as I always say in Parents on a Mission, mom and dad, we're not blaming you for everything, but we are naming you as the number one asset in the community, the most important person in the community. You have that innocent child from the moment it's born, and they have all the attributes, all the endowments to become the best version of themselves and live in their full potential. And because of that, I believe this is why the healthy family continues to be assaulted by government, assaulted by education, assaulted by medical and psychological and anti-family, anti-Christian social groups, because they know that this is the foundation of any society and is nothing new. Uh, this attack on the family. And in this podcast, I'm going to start with going over and talking about the historical and philosophical and cultural uh, forces that have been trying to take the parental authority in the life of children away from us and reclaiming that. And I believe that is one of the most important things I can do. I'm not saying I'm the only one doing it, but I want to at least be a voice to mom and dad. You are the final authority in the life of your children. We don't need to abdicate that role to any other authority figures. We don't need to be intimidated. I'm not saying we can't use more encouragement or counsel or knowledge. You know, education, those things, and there are experts out there, obviously, that have good intentions and they're well intentioned for your children. So I'm not using a broad brush here about every, teacher, psychologist, counselor, doctor, I'm not doing that. But if I'm being honest, unfortunately, there are a lot of those same people in authority that try to intimidate parents and that try to usurp our authority as parents in the classroom, outside the classroom, social media, etc. So I want to look at that and help us understand because if you feel like, the world is pulling your kids away from you, you're not alone. And it is happening. You're not imagining this. The forces, not only are they at work, they've been at work for a long time. And so I'm going to give you some understanding, and you may already know this and understand it, but I just want to start there, and maybe it'll be helpful for you to understand why the things that we're feeling with these other entities or even people or forces, and how it's affecting our relationship with our children. So you have to go all the way back to ancient Greece and Plato. Now, Plato, a philosopher, he wrote what's known as the Republic. And in that document, amongst many other things that he said, but what I'm focused on, what he said about the family and what he said about children and what he said about the role of parents. And it's easily summed up to just say this. He felt that parents were in the way of giving children the thinking and the ideology that they needed to have in order to contribute to the functioning of the state. It's almost like you know, the state is everything, worshiping the state in a sense. And he felt that parents were in the way and their authority needed to be taken from them and that they shouldn't even have the opportunity to raise their own children. Now, that that sentiment, that philosophy, that ideology, uh, it's still taking place, and we'll get to that both in this podcast and in future podcasts. So what's the solution? It's mom and dad, it's you and I understanding our role. And again, as I said, not abdicating that role, that final voice of authority for the education of our children, the health of our children, the social interaction of our children. And I'm talking about children, elementary school all the way up maybe to even high school. That whole span of years, the formative years of our children, especially in those first several years that are so important. And I cover all of that in Parents on a Mission in my books and in the other podcasts from season one. So as we go on here from Plato, now I might name a lot of these people that you probably never heard of before, or maybe you have. I don't know. I'm not assuming you have. I wasn't aware of all these guys. These guys are Marxists, they're communists, they're, you know, everything to me that's opposed to the kind of freedom and republic uh, government that we are supposed to have here in the United States. So a man named Jean-Jacques Rousseau, he, in his time in the 1700s, he said that society and parents corrupt the natural goodness of children. Karl Marx and Frederick Engels, known for their socialist and communist ideology, they felt that the family was a tool of capitalism, a system to pass down wealth and power unjustly. Then we get John Dewey. John Dewey is known, very influential in what we still have as our public education. He's kind of known as the father of modern education. What did he say? He said that the state, the government, should shape the values of the next generation, not parents. And we are witnessing this thinking today more than ever. Then you have these other Marxist thinkers like Antonio Gramsci, Herbert Marcuse, and the Frankfurt School. Now, the Frankfurt School, which is basically a liberal uh, college or think tank, Marxist socialism think tank. That's who these guys were, Antonio Gramsci and Herbert Marcuse. Now, what does that have to do with me and you? Well, in their view, in their teaching, in their writings, they taught that the family is part of the oppressive culture system that must be dismantled for people to be truly freed. Let me get rid of this sound here that's coming out here. Here we go. So, quote, parents get in the way of progress. This is what we're dealing with, mom and dad. And this is why I do Parents on a Mission, because sometimes I feel like parents are just, I mean, I know we got to make ends meet, we got to work, we're busy, so many things are going on. I understand that. But one of my main messages is don't take your relationship with your children for granted because all these voices are out there pulling on their heartstrings, pulling on their mind and their thoughts, and filling them with things that are not in line with our values. This kind of ideology that I'm talking about, that you don't matter, mom, dad, you don't count. You're not as smart as they are. We know what's best for your children, that kind of thinking. And we need to protect children from their parents because mom and dad are not progressive enough. Well, when we start to understand what that means, where is that progression going? Says who, by who, for what? And we start understanding and paying attention to it, that's when things, start to come into focus. And so I know not all of us have the inclination or want or have time to, delve into these things, do the research and the reading that's required to have an understanding of what is really going on. And so those of us who have that calling and that time to do that, that's what I'm doing. And that's what the purpose of this podcast is. I mean, we have, let's be honest, in the world that's being, our children are being shaped by uh, educational frame. Let me just read to you in my notes. Educational frameworks that prioritize ideology over parental involvement. I already said. Health policies where children can make life-altering decisions without parental consent. How do you feel about that? That's what's happening in the schools. Medical professionals, doctors that do not have our best interests at heart and violating their own Hippocratic oath, which is do no harm. Well, this is not me saying it. These are other doctors and medical professionals. They're like whistleblowers, and they are paying a heavy price for calling out these doctors that are bought by the pharmaceutical companies and are just going along with what they want and or relying on the of American Medical Association studies that, again, the research a lot says they're not accurate. They're not even true. But a lot of doctors don't know that, and they depend on those studies. And so they recommend to their patients the drugs and the medications and all those things that those journals are advocating. It just goes on and on. Then we can talk about the media narrative that portrays parents as out of touch and restrictive, and as I said, harmful to the mental health of their children. And then, of course, we have public figures, politicians that are just saying a bunch of things that, I don't even think I have to get into it. I think most of us know. We really have a lack of leadership in our politicians. So let's be clear. You, mom and dad, are no longer seen as the primary authority by these people, by this ideology. You're being treated as a barrier to their progress. And for example, even the United Nations, they have what's called the rights of the child, which is well intentioned, but it's often been used to argue for children's rights being protected from parents, as I already said. So just to summarize this, the family is viewed as a mechanism of control, inequality, or oppression. Children are seen as belonging to the state or society at large. That's where that it takes a village mentality comes from, which you, as you know, if you're listening to me, I don't agree with that at all for all of these reasons that I'm telling you. How can we trust the village when so many in the village don't trust us and they don't believe that we have a right to speak into the education and the health of our own children? How can we trust the village? Parental authority is redefined as arbitrary or potentially harmful. Education and moral formation are best led by the collective or the system or the village, not the individual family. That is what we are up against. That is what I'm speaking about. And that is what I'm warning you, encouraging you, maybe giving you some guidance of what to do. Because we can see the effect it's having on our kids. Uh, I mean, I call it the heads down generation. I mean, do you ever see kids just looking up, having a conversation with other people? They're on the bus, their heads are down. They're walking on the street, their heads are down. They're at the dinner table, their heads are down, looking at their screen. They're at a restaurant looking down. I mean, that's why I just call it the heads down generation because they're being shaped and their whole identity is based on, the algorithms of social media. It's really amazing. Um, but again, I hope that this podcast will be helpful to you. Um, we need to reclaim our authority. Um, and how do you do that? In your home, every day, every night. The most powerful entity in society is not the government. I know you know that. And it's not the school, it's not the university. It shouldn't be the social media influencer. It shouldn't be television programs. Mom and dad, it's you. It's your presence. It's your leadership. It's your consistency. And most of all, it's your unconditional love. So let's do this year in 2026. I recorded a short video not long ago. I don't know if you saw it, but I was encouraging you that in 2026, of all the things, we make New Year's resolutions and what we're going to focus on this year. So many things. You guys know what I mean. Resolutions. We're going to be in better health and do better with our money and, you know, have some goals if we're entrepreneurs, and all of those things are good. But what I was encouraging you in that video, I'm going to say it now, was that you would make 2026 this year to focus more than you ever have before on the relationship that you have with your children, regardless of their age. Now, of course, if they're adults and out of the house, that's different and but it's still important. But I'm mainly talking about you parents who have your kids at home, and especially those that are in elementary school and even earlier than that. Your attachment, so important. Your connection, your relationship, your trust, your attention, your unconditional love. That is what is so important. And we can lead with wisdom. We're not trying to lead our children with fear or control, but in wisdom and relationship where our kids have what's called psychological safety. They feel like they can just talk to you, that you get it, you understand. You don't always agree. We're never always going to agree, but we listen and we see you and we understand. I, you, I want to encourage you, parents, pay attention to your intuition about decisions in medicine, education, mental health. You know what's best for your children, and then find the partners that have the best interests of your children in the schools, in the nonprofits, in the churches. But they're partners. They are not replacements. Let me end again by saying these things that I say all the time. Uh, Mom and dad, your kids don't need you to be perfect, but they do need you to be present. You do have to be clear. And I'm encouraging you more than ever to be bold. Stand up, speak up, show up for your kids. Uh, as I have here written, because when parents lose their voice, nations lose their future. And when parents reclaim their role, generations are restored. And that is what it's all about. I'm Richard Ramos. You've been listening to the Parent Whisperer podcast. Let's turn the hearts of parents back to their children and protect the sacred ground of our home. So, this is the first podcast of 2026. Stay tuned for more on these and other subjects. Subscribe to this podcast, share it, leave a review so that other parents you know can be supported and encouraged. And remember this, mom and dad, Parents on a Mission is not for bad parents. It's for good parents who want to get better. See you next time.